as I sat huddled in the corner of the cold, damp castle, quill in hand. I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The words that once flowed so effortlessly onto the parchment now seemed to stick in my throat like a stubborn knot. It wasn't just the looming deadline for my latest manuscript that had me on edge, but the very real threat of invasion that hung over our medieval fortress like the sword of Damocles. I was a writer, not a warrior, and the thought of facing our enemies head-on made my stomach twist into knots. Just as I was starting to make progress on my writing, the sound of clanging steel and shouting men echoed through the corridors, growing louder with each passing moment. I knew that I couldn't avoid it any longer. Our castle was under attack. I reluctantly set aside my quill and rose to my feet, my heart racing with anticipation. As I made my way to the great hall, I was confronted by the imposing figure of Lord Ravenswood, our sworn enemy and the leader of the rival clan. "You're a hard man to find, writer," Lord Ravenswood sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "I've been searching for you everywhere. You see, I have a bit of a problem with your latest work. It seems to have inspired my enemies to take up arms against me," he snarled, his hand on the hilt of his sword. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure in the face of such hostility. I don't know what you're talking about," I stuttered, trying to back away. But Lord Ravenswood was too quick. He pinned me against the wall, his eyes blazing with fury. "Don't play dumb with me, writer. I know all about your little manuscript, the one that paints me as a ruthless tyrant. You have a choice to make. Either you agree to write a new version, one that portrays me in a more favorable light, or you'll be joining your fellow defenders in the dungeons." I knew that I couldn't give in to Lord Ravenswood's demands, not just because it would be a betrayal of my art, but also because it would be a betrayal of my fellow defenders, who were fighting to protect our castle and our way of life. I steeled myself and looked Lord Ravenswood straight in the eye. "I'll never write a word that I don't believe in," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Lord Ravenswood's face turned red with rage, and for a moment, I thought that he was going to strike me down where I stood. But then, something seemed to click into place, and he stepped back, a calculating glint in his eye. "Very well, writer," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "If you won't write for me, then perhaps you'll fight for me instead." I was horrified. I was a writer, not a warrior. But Lord Ravenswood just laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You have no choice," he said. "You see, I've taken the liberty of acquiring your manuscript, and unless you agree to fight for me, I'll make sure that it's destroyed, along with everyone and everything you hold dear." I knew that I had no choice. I had to agree to Lord Ravenswood's terms, no matter how much it went against my principles. And so, with a heavy heart, I donned a suit of armor and prepared to face our enemies in battle. The fighting was intense and chaotic, with swords clashing and arrows flying through the air. I fought with all my might, but it soon became clear that we were outnumbered and outmatched. As the castle walls began to crumble and our defenses began to falter, I caught sight of Lord Ravenswood, standing on the battlements, a triumphant smile on his face. I knew that all was lost. Our castle, our way of life, everything that I had fought for was on the verge of collapse. And yet, even in the midst of defeat, something unexpected happened. As I looked into Lord Ravenswood's eyes, I saw something there that I hadn't expected, a glimmer of respect. He nodded at me, a small, grudging nod of admiration. "You're a better fighter than I thought you'd be, writer," he said. "Perhaps we can come to some sort of arrangement." I was taken aback. I had expected Lord Ravenswood to gloat and triumph over me, not offer me a way out. But as I looked around at the ruins of our castle, I knew that I had no choice. I nodded, and Lord Ravenswood extended his hand. I took it, feeling a sense of unease and trepidation. It was a fragile truce, one that could shatter at any moment. But for now, it was enough.